Episode 1 of Vikings Season 2 starts off with Leif still furious at Olaf for having killed his beloved Liv. And he comes across some of Olaf's warriors in the woods whom he quickly sends to Valhalla, and in this encounter he learns that Olaf has been taken prisoner by Forkbeard, and he sets off to hunt Olaf down, vowing to kill him. However, Forkbeard has his own plans for Olaf, and even though he declares him a traitor, Forkbeard recognizes his worth and forces Olaf to become the protector of his grandson Sweyn, and to ensure Olaf's loyalty he keeps his son as a hostage. Meanwhile, Harold and Freydis are living out in the wilderness together in relative peace and quiet. However, Harold is not content with such a simple life, but Freydis is happy to finally be at peace and plans to raise their family in the relative quiet and remoteness of the forest. But the seer eventually comes to her and convinces her that her destiny is not confined to this place and that she is only masking the pain and hurt deep inside of her. This finally convinces Freydis that Harold is correct and they can no longer stay in this remote place, and they head towards Kattegat. Aware that Harold may come to find him in Kattegat, Olaf offers a chest of gold to anyone who brings him Harold dead or alive. These bounty hunters are searching high and low for Harold and Freydis, but Leif defeats the hunters and the trio is reunited shortly thereafter. Leif warns both Freydis and Harold that Kattegat is not a safe place for them, and they decide to go the opposite way instead. They eventually run into the party Jorundr, who begs them to sail away with him to save their lives, and after seeing a mark that the seer showed Freydis on Jorundr's arm, she agrees to join him, and Leif and Harold reluctantly agree as well. There they meet the Greenlanders, a rabble who are building some atrocious boats, and Freydis decides to help them, knowing their terrible boats will never last in the sea. But Olaf finds out that his brother Harold is with the Greenlanders, and he is able to surround them with his much larger force. Things look grim for Harold and co, but just as the order is given by Olaf to kill them all, they are saved by Jorundr, who sets the area ablaze with fire, allowing for the Greenlanders and the others to escape from Olaf and his men. Freydis sails off with Jorundr towards her destiny, while Harold and Leif head towards Novgorod. After some investigating, Olaf finds out that Jorundr is a Joms Viking, and they all live at a place called Jomsborg, and he along with Sven and his men head towards the city to destroy their new enemies. Freydis arrives as an honored guest to Jomsborg, where she is already a famous figure and revered by the people as a messenger of the gods. But aside from this, she is also of course the best warrior in Jomsborg and defeats all the men in combat training, highlighting her prowess with the sword to all. Harold and Leif finally reach Novgorod in Rus, and Harold is unable to gain an audience with his uncle Yaroslav, who commands great power there. So he enters a fighting competition, and his uncle recognizes him in the arena and he welcomes him with open arms. Harold asks his uncle for an army to fight against Forkbeard and Canute and become the rightful king of Norway, but unfortunately Uncle Yaroslav is relying on trade with Canute's empire for survival, so he cannot support him. He suggests that Harold should use his wit to rebuild himself and gather an army around him. Harold decides to enter the arena and fight as many warriors as possible to quickly gather the necessary funds. This eventually leads to Harold's fighting prowess catching the attention of Lord Vitimir, who will pay him handsomely to transport something of great worth to Constantinople for him. Back in London, Godwin tells Emma that he fears for her safety, but she brushes aside his concerns. But when someone tries to poison her, she becomes all too aware of the danger she is in. Luckily for her though, Godwin is able to capture this would-be assassin and has him imprisoned. There, Godwin tortures the poisoner for information, but the only thing he reveals is that he was hired by a man nicknamed the Bear. Later on, all the prisoners and guards in the dungeons, including the poisoner, are killed, leaving no witnesses. This causes Godwin to fear for Emma's safety even more, and he has the gates to the city closed. Back in Novgorod, Leif begins to experiment with opium and has hallucinations in which he sees Liv, but they are not pleasant hallucinations and cause him much grief. When Leif wakes up from his high, he sees that he has been cared for by a woman named Miriam, who agrees to educate Leif if he takes her to Constantinople with him. So Leif, Harold, Miriam, Lord Vitimir, and their guide Curiel head towards Constantinople and begin their adventure. In London, Emma finds one of her slaves, Ilfwin, is in a relationship with Godwin, and this causes Emma to become paranoid and she begins to question Godwin's loyalty. To ease her mind, she decides to torture Aelfwine for more information, but Aelfwine persists that she knows nothing about the bear or any plans to assassinate Emma, and she eventually dies from the gruesome torture she had to endure. Godwyn is devastated when he finds out about Aelfwine's death, as he genuinely loved her, and he tells Queen Emma that she has taken everything from him and he will never forgive her. Finally, returning back to Jomsborg, Freydis has been causing a lot of change in the village, which has started to rub the elites the wrong way. But the straw that broke the camel's back was that Jorindr and Freydis were allowing low-class refugees to mix with the superior people of the village for prayer. This enrages Herikr, the leader of the village, so much that he decides to start massacring the refugees and captures Freydis and locks her in the temple. While Freydis is locked in the temple, she goes into labor and delivers the baby on her own, refusing to let anyone come near her since she distrusts them all. However, once the child has been born, Herikr forcibly takes the baby from her and presents the baby to the village as the child of the Chosen One. Harold and Lee's ship is damaged while traveling to Constantinople, so they head to a nearby city called Kodak to find some metal pieces that they can use to fix their boat. While in Kodak, Leif admits he's in love with Miriam and tells Harold that Freydis is pregnant with his child. Harold is very upset that he was not aware of this till now and wishes Freydis would have told him she was pregnant. Back in Jomsborg, Jorindr asks Herikr for forgiveness for his betrayal, saying he was tricked by a refugee woman who he wanted to be with, but he is no longer interested in her. But Herikr says the only way he can forgive Jorindr's betrayal is if he kills Freydis for him. But Jorindr is unable to kill Freydis, and together they hatch a plot to escape from the village and the clutches of Herikr. This is done by having Jorindr pretend to kill Freydis, and he wraps her and the baby's body and sneaks them out of the village in a carriage. But Herikr is not fooled by this ruse and stops Jorindr's carriage and arrests him. But Freydis is no longer in the cage, only her infant son is inside. Harold and Leif's next big challenge is how to navigate a very large and steep waterfall, but there are many on the ship who are happy to stay in the wilderness and don't want to risk going down the waterfall. Harold is determined to fulfill his mission and is eventually able to convince everyone to help him get past the waterfall, even though it is a dangerous and very perilous challenge. Going back to Freydis, she somehow ends up alone in the forest, bleeding and delirious from a high fever. She is found by some refugees who look after her and help her heal. Unfortunately though, things do not end so positively for Jorindr, who is put on trial by Herikr and found guilty for the murder of Freydis, and his punishment for his supposed crimes is to have his hand chopped off and be exiled from the village. Jorindr continues to protest his innocence even as he is escorted out of Jomsborg, but his pleas fall on deaf ears as no one believes him. Back in London, Emma finds out that the bear is a man named John Fletcher, who is an individual with a long-standing relationship with Godwyn and his family. When Emma and Agnar finally find the bear, they realize he is already dead, but there are no obvious signs of murder or foul play. Canute also finally returns back to England, and Emma is overjoyed to see him, as she quickly tells him about her suspicions of Godwyn trying to poison her. But Canute fails to see how Godwyn would benefit from her death and tells her that her theory is not correct, and he goes on to thank Godwyn for protecting Emma and offers the princess Geitha in marriage to him. Freydis shows up back in Jomsborg and everyone is shocked to see that she is still alive, but Freydis wastes little time and demands for Herikr to return her child. But Herikr refuses and says that the gods will decide who gets to keep the child, and they end up having an epic one-on-one duel. Freydis puts up a valiant fight but is unable to defeat Herikr. But before Herikr can kill Freydis, the villagers start throwing stones at him, calling him a traitor, and the mother of Jorindr, Gundrid, is enraged that he exiled her son and throws a rock at Herikr's head and kills him. The plan to go down the waterfall goes terribly, and this results in the ship getting toppled over with all the passengers, with the exception of Miriam and Harold, ending up falling into the water and having to swim for their lives. But things go from bad to worse for Harold and Miriam as they see some Pechenegs approaching. Miriam is able to hide from the Pechenegs, but Harold is taken captive and severely tortured. Leif and the majority of the crew make it back to the ship, with the exception of one crew member who drowned during the mishap coming down the waterfall. They hatch a plan to save Harold from the Pechenegs, and Leif and Kurya head to the camp to offer Kurya, the brother of Khan and a great enemy of theirs, in exchange for Harold. But this plan backfires and all three of them are tied up, but luckily the women of the crew are able to start a fire in the camp and shoot arrows at the Pechenegs, giving enough time for Leif, Harold and Kurya to escape. Knowing that the Pechenegs will not stop chasing them, Kurya offers himself as a sacrifice to allow Leif and Harold enough time to escape, and Kurya is killed and tortured to death. An exiled Jorinder finds his already bad luck get even worse as he is captured by Olaf and his men who have been unable to find Jomsborg, but now they can use Jorinder to get to their destination and Freydis. Jorinder eventually agrees to take Olaf to Jomsborg as he wants to get his revenge against Herreger. Back in London, Godwin and Princess Geetha get married and Canute tells Emma that she must put her suspicions of Godwin's loyalty behind her, which she confirms she has, but it is evident that Emma still does not trust him and that she believes Godwin orchestrated all these events to get married to someone with royal blood. Miriam passes away and this causes much heartache for Leif. They hold a grand funeral for her, and before she passes, Miriam gives Leif the key to her house in Constantinople, saying it is his and it holds many items that will help him in his journey. And continuing the story of Olaf, he decides he wants to start an attack on Jomsborg, and he is convinced by Jorinder to attack the Sentinel first. Jorinder leads this attack but instantly betrays Olaf's forces and sends a signal saying that the Sentinel has been taken even though it hasn't. But this betrayal causes Jorinder his life, who dies from a wound to the stomach that he sustains during this last ditch effort to help Freydis win this battle. Olaf arrives at the docks of the village, but Freydis is ready for him, and she has placed chemicals in the water, allowing her to set all the ships in the water on fire, leaving her and Olaf alone for a one-on-one duel, in which she is the victor, impaling him on a spear. Harold finally meets Emperor Romanos, and he is presented with his treasure, which actually turns out to be Elena, who will become his new wife. This upsets Harold as he and Elena have been romantically involved for a short period. Emperor Monos is enthralled by his gift and says to Harold he can have whatever he likes for delivering his new bride. The final scene of season 2 of Vikings Valhalla sees Freydis returning Sweyn, who was with Olaf, back to Kattegat and his mother Queen Ylfgu. And Freydis states that she could have killed her son but has returned him alive because she wants peace, and the two women agree that there will be no bad blood between them going forward, and Freydis confirms her role as Keeper of the Faith. So that wraps up the Vikings Valhalla Season 2 Episodes 1 to 8 recap, and if you enjoyed this video and want to stay up to date with everything to do with historical movies and historical TV shows, then subscribe to my channel History Spark, and thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.